I think the frustrating thing here is we've seen sides that play a low block, we really struggle against. Like, we want to play in transition. We know all the sort of set plays that we're going to do. We know exactly where each pass is supposed to go, depending on the press. You know, a team like West Ham, who realistically will come to Villa Park, look to defend and hit us on the counter-attack with that pace from the likes of Bowen, they're going to be very difficult to break down. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about Ollie Watkins, Moussa Diaby. Obviously, Ollie scoring against Australia. Some people saying he stole that goal off Jack Grealish. It was quite clearly going out. But Grealish's face was an absolute picture, weren't it, when he saw Ollie sweeping in at the back post to steal that. Diaby didn't go away with France. There was this sort of talk of potential injury, all that kind of thing. He was obviously available for the Wolves game, trained throughout the break, will be available. But the reason I want to mention them, mate, because Diaby and Watkins have created 14 chances for each other during the Premier League so far this season, 7 apiece. And that is at least 4 more than any other duo in the Premier League so far this season. We've said multiple times before, it's great how these guys have seemingly just hit the ground running, and Diaby just gives us a totally different outlet, so much pace, way more clinical than pretty much any other forward that I think we have at the club, including Ollie Watkins as well. This pair are going to be absolutely vital in making sure that we get a result against West Ham, and I'm sure there'll be some French pleasantries that have exchanged with someone like with guys like Zuma and Diop and Diaby as well. So that'll be interesting to see for sure. But I guess it kind of where I'm taking this, mate, is how do you beat West Ham? How do we go about this? Because as you rightfully mentioned, absolutely ginormous side. So set pieces, we're going to struggle there. We don't necessarily have the height to compete with them at set pieces. Low block, we know, traditionally very difficult to break down. Do you relinquish possession? We're at home. That doesn't really seem to be Unai Emery's style. I'm not so sure how to approach this one, mate, if I'm being completely honest.
It's a very interesting one, and Unai's definitely got his work cut out, because David Moyes and West Ham just seem too savvy to kind of be baited by like, you know, when we try and bait the press and draw the opposition out. They just seem like the side that would be like, nah, we're not going to play that game. They have their game and they're very, very good at it. And so we probably are going to have to get a little bit creative. But I've taken the -4 to get Ollie Watkins in for our next run of games. I made a big call. So
you know, you wildcarded early, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Game week 3.
There's early and then there's
outrageous. Outrageous. And I'd love to say it'll work, but it hasn't. And so, yeah, Ollie, we've taken the -4. So do your shit, big man.
I think there's been a fair bit of discussion around Watkins, though, hasn't there, in the break? I feel like there's, you know, listen, we've sat here on this podcast and been frustrated and sort of complained when he's been on these sort of dry runs, but you know, ultimately we know that, you know, it's like when it rains, it pours for Ollie Watkins, doesn't it? And that goes for both, you know, scoring goals and not scoring goals. When he gets one, he'll go on a run. If he goes a couple games without a goal, you know that we're probably going to go at least another 3 or 4 before he finds the back of the net, and then the cycle repeats itself. There was a lot of discourse because there was an interview with Ollie Watkins where he was sort of asked on international duty about, you know, scoring goals, what it's like when he's not scoring goals, this kind of thing, and people have like zoomed in so far and been like, you know, a lot of the sort of the quote that people are picking up where is like, you know, fans complain when you don't get, you know, when you go for a dry run, there's no goals, this kind of thing. It doesn't bother me. And people are like, oh, I saw a few people tweeting, all this guy does is complain about the fans. But I'm like, you just zoomed in on the tiny thing. Like the only thing that matters is the fact that he's not fazed by what anyone says, realistically. Yeah. He's not complaining you as a fan. And to be honest, if you take that so personally, then maybe you should consider how you critique the players. Like, if you're that rattled by somebody who you're probably more than likely abusing online every week when he's missing chances and stuff like that, then maybe you should take a look at yourself rather than Ollie Watkins. But he's so important to how we play. And it just feels like, I think the fact that he's gone away with England, he's had some minutes, he's managed to get the goal. He's going to come back, you know, rejuvenated. And as you pointed out, mate, Zuma and Diop, absolute units, mate. But these are the kind of defenders that do genuinely really struggle to defend against someone like Ollie Watkins. And whilst he may not get a goal in this game, Ollie likes to run the channels. He can get just as physical with these guys, despite not being as big and strong as them. he'll certainly give them a very difficult 90 minutes, won't he?
Yeah, I mean, look at how he got up in between again and Zuma away last season. Do you remember that kind of glancing header? So we know that he can do it. And he does get judged harshly, I agree, but that's because he's a really good player. And it's because that Villa fans, I think, do give Ollie a bit of a harder time than we have perhaps done with other strikers in the past when they've not scoring, because we know that Ollie can do it. And he is very streaky. He'll score in 8 games in a row and then not score for another 8. And that's kind of just how he is as a striker, which is when it's good, it's good. But when he's going through one of those blank spells, it is especially frustrating because you know that he's got the capability to we've seen him do amazing things. And then all of a sudden, when it's just not working for him, it really isn't working for him. And so it's a difficult thing for a fan to kind of get your head around. And so I think that's why he does get a hard time. But this is a defence which, as I said last season, he got in between those two centre halves really, really nicely, met a really good cross. I think it was from Alex Moreno. But we know that Dean can deliver similar balls, and showed that, it's not just about the nice 1-2 stuff on the edge of the area, the snapshots. Like, he can do the big, old-fashioned number 9 centre forward stuff. He can go and rise high amongst 2 centre backs and find the far corner. And I think when you play a side against West Ham, when we're just going back to your point about how do you beat them, I think by and large you've got to kind of play them at their own game. I think if you try and be too nice and try and beat them with really nice fluid flowing football, ultimately it is that physical test that we've fallen short of in the past. And I think unless you kind of stand up to that, unless you meet them man to man and kind of, to go full Brexit on this, win your individual battles and all that kind of stuff, you probably don't have much of a chance. I think you've got to do that stuff to beat this team, and we've seen Ollie do it in the past. So you got to back the